ISGAN is the International Smart Grid Action Network. It is an international energy agency technology collaboration program that was an initiative of the Clean Energy Ministerial. ISGAN is the only global government-to-government forum on smart grids. Next slide, please. We are a group of national experts from 25 countries and the European Commission committed to supporting the global shift towards smarter and more reliable electricity distribution systems, which are key to meeting clean energy goals. There are 6 active working groups engaged in various aspects of smart grid development and deployment. Next slide. Our vision is to accelerate progress on key aspects of smart grid policy, technology, and investment. ISGAN emphasizes the importance of strong, reliable, resilient, flexible, and affordable power grids, supported by the digitalization of the electricity system for achievement of goals on the grid edge. The grid edge includes the integration of electric vehicles, renewable energies, energy storage, and demand-side management. We implement this through the facilitation of dynamic knowledge sharing, technical assistance, peer review, and project coordination between contracting parties in the areas of policy, finance and business models, technology system development, workforce skills and knowledge, and user and consumer engagement. Next slide. Activities we leverage to achieve this include outputs such as policy briefs, technical and discussion papers, conference presentations, and webinars like this one. If you would like to learn more about us, please visit our website. Next slide. So, what is the Lighthouse project? As members of ISGAN explored the planning and implementation of smart distribution grids, it became apparent that these processes include many external influencing forces and actors with diverse roles and goals. This often results in actors operating in silos, under conditions of uncertainty, and within governance frameworks that are slow to adapt. So in 2023, ISGAN launched the Lighthouse project to facilitate collaboration between these actors and across countries and sectors, helping to overcome challenges like fragmented planning and slow policy changes. It was decided that the best initial focus area of the project should be long-term planning and implementation of smart distribution grids under uncertainty, with the vision of increasing ISGAN's impact, accelerating the energy transition by mobilizing actors in new ways around smart grid knowledge. Having the ISGAN community mobilized around this unified theme and employing a synergistic project structure enables us to connect different knowledge and perspectives, joining forces and exploring new ways of working. In doing this, we engage more effectively with our stakeholders, resulting in more impactful and cohesive external communication. It promotes practical solutions and long-term thinking. The initiative aims to strengthen global efforts to modernize energy systems through shared learning and innovation. Next slide. But to achieve this, we need a shift in mindset from the traditional reactive grid planning approaches that rely on rigid master plans and are static to a forward-looking, adaptive, and scenario-based planning approach that can effectively manage long-term uncertainties. Next. This new approach envisages planning and decision-making that is dynamic, continuously evolving, and built on collaboration among many key actors. It embraces complexity, incorporating scenario-based planning, risk assessments, and resilience measures to navigate an ever more unpredictable energy landscape. And it prioritizes strategic intelligence over historical trends. In today's fast-changing world, relying solely on past data is no longer viable. Decision makers need advanced modeling, real-time data, and strategic foresight to stay ahead. Next slide. Phase 1 of the Lighthouse project ran from November 2023 to October 2024 and resulted in a series of tangible outcomes, including a policy brief to SIM 17, pilot of the Knowledge Hub, a global workshop series, new collaboration between ISGAN's working groups 3 and 7, enhanced online communication, and a framework on long-term planning and implementation. That framework is what we are exploring during this workshop series. Next slide. Phase 2 of the Lighthouse project began in October 2024 and is even more ambitious, with a suite of activities that include includes this webinar series, exploring key aspects of long-term grid planning and implementation of smart distribution grids, with the help of the new framework developed in phase 1 of the Lighthouse project. These activities will combine to deliver a set of high-impact knowledge projects to be launched in conjunction with the Clean Energy Ministerial next year. So to tell you more about the Lighthouse framework and the focus of today's webinar and introduce you to our panelists, I will now hand over to Charapa.
Thank you so much, Kishore, for introduction of the ISGAN and also the Lighthouse projects. So my name is Jirapa Kamsamrong. I am a group leader of Smart Grid Testing at Office Institute for Information Technologies. So I will be a moderator today for the panel discussions. But before we moving to the interesting part of the panel discussions, I would like to give you a little bit more detail about the framework today. So the ISGAN Lighthouse framework, what is it about? So the framework is about forward-looking of the long-term planning of smart distribution grid. What is giving us? It provides a structured approach to improve understanding and global dialogue of exchange knowledge and lesson learned, also the best practice. It gives us clear structures, how to organize the knowledge and understand the complexity of energy system. It also helps the expert as well, also the stakeholder that involved in this process to work together and share the lesson learned and the knowledge that they can work together. By using this framework, stakeholders can manage the challenge and plan better for the long-term planning. In the end, it builds a framework that people can work together. It provides clarity and common visions of how we can shape the power grid for tomorrow. So this is about the ISGAN Lighthouse framework. As Tejo already mentioned that we are moving from reactive to proactive planning. So that is why we're starting with, let's look into this one. We understand that the reactive planning is no longer working anymore because we're working on the dynamic behavior of energy system. Now we are focusing on the resilient adaptability of the energy system. The uncertainty we face today is no longer static and fixed, but they are more dynamic and constantly changing over the time. Decision making is also no longer it's just one-time process at the beginning of the long-term planning, but it involves the whole process throughout of the planning, also including for the replanning phase as well. So it should be collaborative and continuously working together, both planning and replanning together. This means consultation should involve all the key stakeholders, not just the policymakers, but also another player as well or stakeholder. For example, technicians, economists, engineers, also academia and power system operator. This means that these stakeholders can provide valuable insight and also the input that we can use for the long-term planning. In the past, long-term planning can be very limited update with fixed assumptions, but in the future, and when we look into forward-looking in a proactive way, we don't have the fixed assumption anymore. It's more dynamic, and we have to update these assumption and planning regularly to reflect today's and even in the futures of the situation as well. The philosophy of Lighthouse project is that we want to provide the framework and foundation that we can plan the grid in the long term, that providing us resilient, interoperable, cyber secure, affordable, and sustainable. So this is the overall of how we would like to achieve from reactive planning to the proactive planning. The framework that for ISGAN that we want to focus on, as you can see in these pictures, we have 5 phases of the long-term planning. Start from foresight, strategic decision making, long-term planning, assessment and decision support, and at the end, implementations. As you can see that they consist of different 5 phases. And we already have one webinar in September that focused on the 2 beginning of the phase of the ISGAN. And today, phase that we're going to focus on is about long-term planning. Let's deep dive into this phase, what we are going to learn about today. What are the key activities for the long-term grid planning? So it could include for grid capacity need from the foresight phase that already introduced. Also providing some kind of like what can be considered for the connection requirement, the investment need, identify for appropriate of the grid development options, and also evaluation of the solution that can comply with technical standard, regulatory framework. But there's some key issue that we're going to consider for the planning as well. How we can plan for the grid for resilience and adaptabilities, how the grid can be designed and operate in resilient way, or how to plan the grid for reliability and stability, that how the grid can operate in stable and reliable way. Considering that we integrate for flexibility from distributed energy resources, for example. Also plan for interoperability grid, how the grid can coordinate and exchange the data between different power grid across the border as well, also inside the country. So this is all the example for the key issue that we're going to consider for the planning phase. And the outcome of the planning phase, what could be the outcome from this, is the foundation for the long-term grid development plan that provide a basis and the foundation for the formal reporting, approval and decision making, and also the concrete option for the grid development needs as well. So for our webinar today, this is just for the high-level information for the planning phase. But we have 3 experts to share insight about the planning phase with us today. The first one is Professor Fabrizio Giulio Lucapillo, and the second one is Gianluigi Miguel-Walker, and the last one is Olivia Guinness. And maybe Gianluigi, you can share with us what do you think about the foundation element that are essential for formulating long-term grid planning options. What do you think about it? What is your view on this?
Thank you, Girappa. I think that this question is a very good one, and I would like to start without so much fantasy from the big pillar of today, that is decarbonization. And decarbonization calls for a massive introduction of renewable energy sources. This integration of renewable energy sources should increase during time. And as a consequence of that, there will be 2 kinds of congestion in the future. The traditional one, in which there is a shortage of connection between 2 points in the network, that is a structural congestion, happens for the majority of the hours of the year, and calls for new lines or at least for a reinforcement of existing ones. But there will be also another kind of congestion that is a temporary one due to spikes of production of the renewable energy sources. And in this case, sometimes the amount of time for which the congestion is on and the amount of energy, so the cost that it implies with respect to the cost of building a new line, suggests that this is not the best solution. Actually, the best solution is to implement, in this case, a local storage. So local storage means, in this case, a possibility to bufferize the excess of production and of the renewable energy sources locally, and then to release it subsequently when the production level is diminished, and maybe you have a negative hole in the production of them as well. And so in this case, you get the possibility to have a new planning element, that is the storage device itself, that is characterized by 2 positive characteristics. One is that it is less costly with respect, so less expensive with respect to build a new line. But also, and that is not to be overlooked as well, the fact that you need much less time and less permission bureaucracy in order to deploy it. So all in all, the planning for the future should be enriched by considering also storage as a tile of this proceeding. So new lines, reinforcement of existing lines, and also storage. But of course, in order to be useful, storage should be located in those places where it can provide that service of bufferizing the overproduction of renewable energy sources. And in order to do so, some sponsorization, some incentivization policies should be put in place. And first of all, capacity markets that are there in order to make it possible to have storage where it is most needed. But there is also another consequence of that, and with that I close my overlook of that. So that is the fact that distribution grids will become more and more active with the presence of distributed generation, so renewable energy sources as first, and storage as well. And due to that, they are not just any longer something that is used in order to bring energy to the final customers, but energy should be also brought back backward toward the TSO itself, so toward the transmission network in order to provide services. And so the TSO and the DSO as manager of the distribution network and the TSO as manager of the transmission network should dialogue together and coordinate their actions in order to get these services provision in the best way possible. And that TSO-DSO coordination topic is one of the hottest ones for the future. So, in my opinion, enlarged planning and TSO-DSO coordination are the most important foundational elements for the future.
Thank you so much, Yanrisi, for very insight of the foundation element. And I think that is very connected to the next one that I'm going to ask from Olivier. What do you think about the foundation element for the long-term grid planning for the futures, in your view?
Yeah, so for me, one foundational element is interoperability, meaning that how we can have different systems that can interact together that will involve systems from different domains. And so this is required to have kind of system view in which we are able to have like transmission level or distribution level or customer policies level that would finally cooperate and act as a one system.
Okay, thanks so much for the introduction of the view that about the foundation of the formulating of the long-term planning. And we can hear more from Fabrizio. Would you like to share the view as well?
Yes, the fundamental, planning in the long term means forecasting the future. And so I think that it's really crucial for better long-term planning is forecasting. Forecasting is crucial, particularly because it's very difficult to forecast because we don't know exactly how much renewables we are going to connect, how many electric vehicles, where, in which positions, and we don't know many things. This is something that was the same also in the past. Sure, but planning is about the future, and so we need to forecast. But now forecasting is really crucial because we need a high granularity in time and space. So I think this is one crucial point from my side, improving forecast. And the other point is, as Gianluigi said, we should abandon the idea to split the system into different with different boundaries. We have to think that the system is unique, and then so if we plan for the future, we should plan. Okay, we should try to coordinate TSO and DSO planning in some way, and even inside the DSO, we have different voltage levels, medium voltage, low voltage, and this sometimes means that there is a kind of separation. As the same separation between TSO and DSO sometimes is inside DSOs, and so they plan medium voltage and separately they plan the low voltage. And also in this case, we need the integration and integrated planning. In this case, it's easier to obtain the integration. We don't need coordination is only for between TSO and DSO, but integrated planning for distribution is also a crucial point. And finally, what is essential for future, we should in long-term planning, we should abandon the idea that long-term planning is not related to the short-term planning and the operational planning. And this is another point. Maybe I will have time later to say something more.
Thank you so much. So I think that is the one that setting the scene that we would like to deep dive into, what you mentioned today about what are the foundation for the long-term grid planning. I will give you the floor to deep dive into the insight that you would like to provide to us. Fabrizio, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Girapa. Thank you very much. Yeah, just a couple of slides, man. Nothing. Usually, what is crucial for resiliency and adaptability of grids, I think that the first point is that, and this is not that common at the moment, we should include the resiliency matrix in the planning process. And this is not that easy because the resilience matrix can include a lot of different things, from the transportation system to the communication, and not only the electrical part. So this is really a challenge, but there's also an opportunity. And so the first point is including resiliency in planning, and not only resiliency considering the assets, but including also the operational resiliency. That means using the resources you have to face against major events. And so this should be included. And as I said before, we should couple long-term scenarios with short-term adaptability. That means using flexibility. And Gianluigi before mentioned the role of storage, but we can also include not many different types of storages. And thermal storage, for instance, not only electrical storage, but we have also to include in long-term plannings the possible services that can be offered by the demand, for instance. And that means we should include the short-term planning and operational planning in long-term studies. And this is not that easy. And sure, we have new opportunities with digital twins and data-driven models. We can also include them in planning and just to simulate, okay, what is going to happen when we do some changes. So using the digital twins, that means planning that is also based on real data, not only on assumptions and forecasted data. And okay, the flexibility, we have already talked about the flexibility and sector coupling. Not only electrical system, we can exploit the flexibility that comes from other systems, and we can also increase the level of flexibility in our systems. That means, let's say, now there is a lot of discussion around soft open points for the distribution grids that are capable to transform radial grids into meshed systems without changing the functioning of protection. So this is very useful, and China is doing a lot of research on soft operating points. Inside it, we had many papers dealing with this topic, and this is something, just an example of new flexibility that should be included in long-term planning for increasing the capability to withstand the challenges coming from energy transition and from the climate change. And crucial, really crucial, is the connection between planning and governance and regulation. Okay, for many years, and we are still doing that. We are planning the distribution systems without considering, in the long term, without considering any opportunity coming from the operation of resources, okay? Simply because it was not allowed by the regulation. Now in the European, after the winter package directive in 2019, now this is allowed, okay? So it's possible, not only allowed, it's strongly recommended. If you have to build a new line, you have to prove that that new line cannot be substituted by using services, okay? So the flexibility services and so on. But so it's very important that the relationship between governance and planning. And just to the last slide, just one minute, no more. Okay, just 3 key messages. As I said before, high spatial and temporal granularity in forecasting. An example on the right is from a paper from mine, but you can find the paper published in IEEE Access. Okay, this we need a lot of information from the ground, from the territory. We have a lot of forecasting and scenarios, high level, top level, and but it's very difficult to use that scenarios, high level scenario in areas. Okay, that's an example. If we recommend to use heat pumps, because heat pumps are better for the energy transition, that's true. But if I'm planning the future of a grid that is on the mountains, in the mountains probably heat pumps do not work so in an appropriate way. So I cannot simply use the high level forecasting or high level scenario in an area that is not allowed to do that. And so this is very crucial. Spatial and temporal granularity of forecasting, particularly for distribution, that is very specific, must be very detailed, even in the long term. And the operational and long term, I said, and this is very important also, that we abandon the idea to use simplified approaches for planning. It is simply not possible now. We have to do many things. And just an example, deterministic approach is no longer useful. Okay, that's one point. If I claim that I want to use flexibility in a system to fix the temporary issues that Gianluigi mentioned before, and I don't use a probabilistic approach, the result is flexibility is not convenient. But it's not a problem of flexibility, it's the problem of the way on the model and I'm using. So the model I used really affected the results. Okay? This is really a problem that we should try also to fix, because it's better to have for benchmarking. It should be better to have a unified approach. And so we should find a better models. Some examples, please have a look. Unfortunately, it is written in Portuguese, but if you look at the network development plan for distribution from IREDES, he's the Portuguese distribution company, you can find very high level long-term planning, 10 years, that's between 5-10 years, with probabilistic approach, with a lot of good ideas on how to use data from the field, from smart grids for planning purposes, and so on. Okay, this is just an example. There are very good examples in as chairman of SILED, I've seen many contributions from DSOs in the UK, in Germany, in Italy, and some good ideas on planning for resiliency, for instance, long-term planning without using less joints, because joints are responsible for failures in case of heat waves. And so that's there are still good examples on the field, but there is a lot of work to do for a really modern and future planning. Thank you. For maybe I was a little bit too long, sorry for that, but I finished. Thank you for your attention.
Not at all, Fabrizio. For the audience, if you would like to ask some questions, you can write your question into the chat, and then we will take your question at the end as well. So maybe we can move forward, because I think that we already hear, about the view on how we can plan for the futures, and especially, for the energy storage as well. I think that Gianluigi can tell us more a little bit on this, and especially to, how we can use storage to really enhance stability and, flexibility as well. So Gianluigi, the floor is yours. Your mic is mute.
Thank you, Giraffe, again. Okay, I will connect again to what Fabrizio was saying, because it's very important. So DSO grids are becoming active, and distributed regeneration becomes important. And on top of that, flexibility is important, as I said before. And flexibility can be provided most notably from storage, but not only electrical storage. Here I indicated BESS, so the electrochemical batteries, but of course there are other sources of storage. And among those sources of storage, we cannot forget that also other carriers like hydrogen storage, like in any case the so-called line pack of the gas ducts can be a possible source of storage that can provide services towards the electricity system that unfortunately, differently from other carriers, is characterized by rigidity, by the fact that demand and generation should coincide instant by instant, what in systems that have more accumulation capacity, for instance, the pipelines of the gas system, is less stringent, less important. So the planning procedure should correspondingly be modified and favor the deployment of flexibility sources. And as I said, deploying local storage should be part of the grid planning procedures themselves. As Fabrizio has already recalled from the third package on, this is a must also for the DSOs, not only for the TSO. The difference is that TSOs have already takes weapons in order to do so. The DSOs are just starting now, but that was requested already a lot of years ago, if I remember well, 2019 or like that, when the third package was issued. So here I come to some suggestions from the last of the three European projects I was coordinator of, FlexPlan. Here you find also the site, the website, in case you want to connect to know more about it. And from it, I take three big recommendations, three big points that I would like to get deeper, a little bit deeper now. So the DSO planning should include the efficient deployment of flexibility resources in distribution. However, flexibility means to a large extent storage, but storage is not allowed to be invested by the system operators. Private investors are in charge of that. That means that the bilateral relationship that was traditional for planning, so between TSOs and DSOs on one side, who make the plans for planning, the NRAs, so national regulatory authorities that approve those investments, and then again the TSOs and DSOs who realize those investments, that bilateral relationship should enlarge itself to a sort of triangle in which we should have room also for the private investors. Private investors should, of course, relate to the system operators in order to understand where it would be necessary to invest in order to provide flexibility for the system. And of course, the NRAs should in some way say their own view on approving at least indirectly those investments by giving or not giving incentivizations for them. Actually, there is one important point, because when I touch the theme of incentivizations, it is clear that national regulatory authorities should translate the suitability of deploying new storage or flexibility in strategic network locations into opportune incentivization tools for potential investors. Normally, what every country is deploying in this period is to set up capacity markets. Those markets are sort of auctions in order to provide new storage, new flexibility, more in general, for the system in the location where everywhere, sorry, in the system. But those capacity markets that are normally not locational sensible should become locational sensible, because it is important that investments are concentrated in those nodes and areas identified by the system operators in order to be most effective for the system. In Italy, we have put in place recently a new mechanism that is called MAXE. That is a mechanism that sides the capacity markets, but is specifically organized into auctions for regional basis capacity. And that is very important because it will provide some mechanism in order to drive the investments where they are most needed. In any case, there is a possible drawback of having strong storage investments in some regions of the system, because maybe that storage could become endowed with the capacity of exercising market power. So being so essential for providing the needed services that actually it can put for those services in the services market those bits that they want. So in principle, also very high prices. That is the so-called market power, so the possibility to strategically bid in order to increase the revenues of the company above the level of perfect competition that would prescribe the marginal cost attached to the bids. How to avoid the possible exercise of market power? There are three possibilities, basically, three possible remedies. One is to combine market-based mechanism for the procurement of flexibility with long-term contract with a pre-established strike price to disincentivize aggressive strategies. So if I put compulsory a long-term contract on top of those who provide flexibility that obliges them to give back to the system operator, or in any case to the system, the difference between what is the result of the market and a pre-established strike price that should coincide more or less, because the awarding is competitive with the competitive price. That is a strong disincentivization for aggressive strategies. Other more strong intervention could be establishing a cap on bid prices, or even to establish that some important devices can be exercised directly by the system operator as must-run devices. But those are only extreme situations. Please, next slide. Next, okay. So a second point is the cooperation between TSO and DSO that should be strengthened. So basically, the DSO should abandon the planning strategy based on the worst case and adopt a full-fledged planning process based on scenarios. And those scenarios should take into account risk variability and take into account the constant monitoring of the system provided by the so-called central plant controller units that have become compulsory also in Italy now, and they are useful in order to gauge grid congestion in real time, also in distribution systems. Of course, in this framework, the DSOs appear in the double role of collecting local services, but also to act as facilitator for services provision to the transmission system. Basically, that has been also the title of a meeting that our regulatory authority, ARERA, has made here in Milan a couple of days ago. So that shows how important is this theme. So there are pros and cons of a integrated versus coordinated approach, but basically even if maybe an integrated planning would be more efficient from the point of view of the optimization. But basically, fully integrated T&D planning is not reasonable due to the numerical complexity of the optimization problem and due to the legal implications of complete data sharing, even between system operators. So better to resort to a coordinated planning approach by means of exchanging the data at the border between the different systems. And basically, the DSOs in case advantageous, should oversize their network in order to get fit to provide flows, also to provide services to transmission. This basic T&D decomposition approach can be also algorithmically studied. In the FlexPlan project, we advanced a proposal, an algorithmic proposal for that could be seen also as a good starting. There are also some papers on that one. Was also at the last SIRED was presented there. Last point I would like to raise is the fact that externalities like environmental externalities should be internalized in order to improve the cost-benefit analysis for planning. And so the social welfare should be compared with some other criteria like the environmental criteria that once translated into cost criteria should speak the same language as the social welfare, and so should be compared in the same cost minimization approach. And so also on that in FlexPlan we made some algorithmic proposals. I think it's very important also to consider this kind of analysis. To conclude, storage should be, in any case, seen in a broader sense. So not only BESS, but also other kind of storage, and also the concurrency of the different carriers. And so the multi-criteria approach, even if making the planning even more complicated and cumbersome, but this process of planning should be enlarged in order to have around the table all the responsible system operators of the different carriers. So not only the electricity system operators, but also the gas system operator, and in the future also the hydrogen grid system operator. Thank you, Girapa.
Yeah, thank you so much, Yanushji. I think that is one point that you mentioned about TSO, DSO coordinations. That's quite important as well, because now it's not just one grid, but then, communicate, between the power system operator, and now we have more distributed energy resource that need to be exchanged as well. So I think that is one of the topic that Olivia can share with us, how we can plan for interoperable grid in your view. Maybe you can share the insight, what you think, and what are the foundation of what we can plan for this one. The floor is yours, Olivia.
Yes, so I will talk about interoperability, which is a bit more transversal, but is required because when we talk about cooperation or about how a world grid will act together in a consistent way, we need to have different systems being interoperable. So what is interoperability? There is a good definition defined by IEC 8001-1, in which we highlight that it's a property of diverse systems and components being able to work together for a specific purpose. So that's what we want to achieve when we want to have this kind of long-term approach in which we want to have several parts of the system that will act together and make sure that they will finally reach what we want, like stability or resilience of the system. But the main question there is, where do we need interoperability? Because we have many systems and we have many aspects that we need to take into account. So more than 10 years ago, a model was developed called the Smart Grid Architecture Model. So you can find it on the right. It's also called ISGAN. And you see in this model that there are different domains, different zones, and also different layers. So the domains will highlight that we will need interoperability between different parts of the system. Could be the customer premises, could be the DR part where we have some generation. It could be also distribution system, transmission system, and at the end could be also the bulk generation. Also, we need to look at interoperability at different levels, because there will be interoperability between the device themselves or local intelligence, I would say. There could be some interoperability that will gather at the station level, could be substation or could be primary station. And it could also be at the operational level when you will have like operation center, or at enterprise level, and finally at market level. So these are the zones. And when we look at all these kind of interfaces, we need also to agree about different layers of interoperability, because as you know, all these information systems are made of several layers. And when we talk about interoperability at the communication layer, we mean that we need to have a communication protocol that will be implemented the same way and will enable several systems to exchange some information. But then we need also interoperability at the information layer, so the one in orange, in which we will make sure that the system are able to understand each other and have the same meaning behind the data. And if when we go one step up, we also have this function layer, then we'll more discussing about the use case and about the behavior that will be implemented by the system. And all these use case and function rely on a common understanding of the framework and the regulatory framework or the business framework that we can have, meaning that we'll have some understood and shared roles, and also some objectives that will be highlighted at the business level. So we need interoperability, and it's not only one interoperability, it's at many layers, and depending on the kind of system we have, some of them are more important. So how this topic is tackled at EU level in particular, but also a broader approach, several discussion arise on how we can share some data, but also how we can coordinate. And now for several years, we've been developing the concept of data spaces. The main principle is that we have several actors or systems that will be able to exchange some data. And for that, they will not rely like on one single hub or platform that will do everything, but just to say that they will have some shared governance and procedures, so they are able to connect to each other to share some data. So you have this kind of perspective on the bottom left, in which we see that there are these different entities that will be sharing some data, and some of them are part of the same circles in which they are able to exchange some data, but also we see that the purple one are able to communicate and to connect to other ecosystem, and finally maybe being able to have the data from the grid domain that will be able to be exchanged with data from the building domain or from the mobility domain, enable this kind of cross-sector cooperation. And for that, European has launched several projects to develop kind of common European energy data space, so this CEDS. And you see on the right the list of main projects that were focusing on developing this data space, namely like NRShare, Omega X, AD, Synergy, and Data Seller. And also with the coordination of Internet, this project recently achieved the end and finally shared some final insights that were circulated in the final event. You can find that online. And also we have some other ongoing projects around this core that are somehow exploiting this data space opportunity to develop some use case related to digital twin or related to overall IoT edge cloud cooperation. And finally, when we have that, we have a better understanding on what are the requirements, where do we need to have interoperability, how data spaces can support us, and then we go into standardization, because we need to have standardized way to exchange data and standard ways to cooperate. And so for that, there are many activities that are ongoing at IEC level, at Sentinel level, also in HC, to make sure that we have all the standards that we need, so we are able to implement in practice this interoperability in the future.
Thank you so much, Olivier, for the view for planning for interoperable grid. And I think that when we look into the three insights from Fabrizio, Gianluigi, and you, and we're thinking that this is not just like one layer that we are dealing with. It's many layers that we have to communicate since the planning. For example, like forecasting as well, that how we forecast, how we integrate energy storage, how we design the grid, to operate that, and then how to communicate them together. So I think that is something that we are, going to consider this foundation into the planning, for the future. I would like to discuss a little bit more detail. We have around 8 minutes, so I think that is just one question. So maybe from the very quick question, like in your views, what are the uncertainty for the long-term grid planning that we must account to enhance the grid for the future? Maybe Fabrizio, very short, answer from your view. What you think about it?
I think it's very difficult to include in long-term planning now what is going to happen with the, let's say, with the Green Deal and the energy transition. Because there are a lot of the pressures against. Okay, many are against. They want to slow down the process. So it's very difficult now to do a long-term planning. Even if I think that now it's almost impossible to go back. Okay, now it's clear that it's more convenient producing energy with green energy with PV and other sources. In many cases, are more convenient than traditional. Besides the impact on the environment, that is for sure very crucial. But anyway, this is very difficult to predict what is going to happen. So I think that what we need is we have to produce not one scenario but more than 1, 2, 3 different scenarios, and we have to do techniques to apply techniques for managing the risk. Okay, there are many. One is a min-max regret, is a typical way to manage the risk in case of uncertain scenario. So we have, and because we have to plan the system, not for what we think is really going to happen, but we have to manage the system if the scenario that will happen will be completely different very different from our preliminary idea. So this managing the risk in long term. And the second point is that I think that we should be ready to adapt our long-term planning, and so we should adapt in case if something changes. And this is another point. Okay, that's so we don't need. We need, I think, more roadmaps than detailed planning studies in the long term. And we should, let's say, and every 2-3 years we should stop and look back what happened and look in the future what is going to happen and change something. And even in this case, flexibility is again also crucial, because if we anticipate too many investments, probably this is not good for the future that is going to happen. But if we can postpone, we can see what is really going to happen, and the flexibility is a typical way to postpone investments and to deal with uncertainties in a different way. Okay, this is I don't know if this answers your question. Just one point just to remark what Gianluigi said regarding the market for flexibility. This is really crucial, and we should really separate what happened in the transmission and what happened in the distribution systems. In transmission, market in principle can work perfectly, because you don't need the flexibility from that customer in that point in the grid. Okay, but if you need flexibility for the distribution, that's much more site sensitive, and then probably, as Gianluigi said, markets are not necessarily the best option, because if you are a monopolist, you can offer your flexibility for prices that are incredibly high. And so that's something that we should think a bit. And probably if we really want to proceed for energy transition, short-term markets is not always the best option. Okay, that we are seeing that power purchase agreements are much better than other options for promoting renewables, and for flexibility, probably market is not necessarily the best solution, and maybe it's better to have, let's say, contracts or something like that. And this is and since I'm working with some national projects on using flexibility, we see that it's very difficult because the grids are radial and you have a congestion in that line, and if you have a congestion in that line, the flexibility from the customer's upstream that line is simply useless. And
Right.
so that's the point. And this is I really want to stress
That is
what
important
Gianluigi
point.
said, because it's really crucial, I think, and we should abandon the mantra market is not always the best, and so we have to think something different.
Gianluigi, maybe you can add a little bit on that as a closing, because now we are running out of time. Maybe you have something to add on that, on the flexibilities.
Yes, basically, apropos the term uncertainties, we have a new system now in which everything is fast moving, differently from the traditional approach in which big power plants were planned, everybody knew about where they were and so on. So those small RES power plants, those small storage systems are located swiftly and chaotically in the system, and it is very difficult in the last times for the system operators to keep pace with that. And also the regulation is changing very fast, because of course you need to keep the pace with a system that is changing, and so you have to take into account that is also important, the point of view not only of the system operators but the one of the investors, that is the triangle that I showed in the previous slide. That means that you have also to put in the shoes of the potential investors, understand their business plans, their business problems, and provide the right incentivization so that the plans of the investors and the plans of the system do coincide. And that makes the planning difficult. And as I said, I conclude by saying that another important aspect makes the planning difficult. So you have to coordinate TSO with DSO, and that is already something new. But you have also to coordinate the TSO with the DSO of the electricity system, with the TSO and DSOs of the other carriers that are connected to the electricity system, because those carriers will be the ones that most likely will provide a big slice of flexibility to the electricity system. And so putting around the table so many subjects is difficult. Mm-hmm. So you need to have regulatory tools, so to say, governance tools that allow them to speak together. And maybe you need also to have, from the point of view of the development of the models, something that favorizes the fact that the planning will not any longer be a centralized one, but a coordinated one.
Yeah, thank you so much. But I think that we are working on it to make what we are facing now and to make things better. But maybe Olivia, when you hear about how to design the system, I think that interoperability is that at the beginning. How do you view on that? Like as a conclusion, like should we do something different, to integrate these interoperability, at the beginning of the design phase, not later on? How you think that, how it can change and to be a better way in the futures?
Yeah, that's right. It's important to take it from the beginning. We can even talk about trying to reach interoperability by design, meaning that in the way we are designing the system, we are expecting interoperability and we are supporting and enabling interoperability. And this is really important also because we are talking about long term. So the kind of device or system that we are deploying today will probably last on the system for like 40 years. So we need to make sure that we are deploying systems that will be sustainable over the future, will be able to cooperate. And even if today it will act with a very limited number of other systems to cooperate, it may happen that in the future we'll need to have a broader cooperation, and then interoperability will be one of the key features that are required.
Okay, I think that the time is up, but I'm very would like to hear more from you actually, but I think we have very limited time. Maybe if you have any questions or any comment, you can following up about ISGAN Lighthouse later on in our website as well. So the next step is that yes, we will have more webinar like this, focusing on another phase as well, and we will announce it in the ISGAN website and LinkedIn as well for the next webinar. And for this record, we will publish on the YouTube later on. So yeah, you can see more the detail of the knowledge for the ISGAN Lighthouse and more on the casebook future next year as well. So I would like to thank for all the experts, Fabrizio, Gianluigi, and Olivia, to share the insight how we can plan the future better grid that we are contributing today. I hope that our knowledge and our effort is contributing in some way and make things better. And I also thank to all participants with us today as well that you participating, and I hope to see you all again maybe in another event. So thanks so much, and yeah, I wish you a nice day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you very much.